Welcome everyone who's joining us.
Welcome.
We'll give a few minutes for others to be joining us. I see a lot of people are in the waiting room, so we'll just give it a couple of minutes before we begin. Welcome to everyone. Thank you for making the time to join us. Welcome to everyone. As we continue to allow people to join, I would like to encourage people on the call who have already joined to go into the chat box below. Please tell us which country you're dialing in from and which sector you're working in as we allow our colleagues to dial in. Thank you. I see people from Kenya. Welcome. I see people joining us from different sectors. Welcome, South Africa. We see you, agriculture. We recognize you. As the new people are joining in, Southern Carolina, welcome as well. As you continue to join, please be putting in the chat box the country or the area you're coming from and the particular sector you're from. Germany, recognize you. Welcome, Paris. Welcome, Kenya. We see you, welcome. Please use the chat box to tell us and drop a line on which country you're dialing in from and the sector. We'd like to continue getting to know each other. As we wait for people to be joining, we are still at 45 people. We know over 100 people had registered for this particular webinar. Thank you. I see people from PwC. I see you. Welcome to today's webinar. We have 1.5 hours together today, and I'd like to kick us off with introductions. As you continue introducing yourself within the chat box, I would like to start the ball rolling in terms of the particular webinar. I would first like to provide a guide on how we will spend the next 1.5 hours together. We will start with introductions of the panelists, as you as well are going to be introducing yourselves within the chat box. We will then highlight the format of this particular webinar before I set the context, and then we begin the discussion. In terms of introduction, I'll start. My name is Angela. Thanks again for making the time to join us today. I support investments and investment case building for individuals as well as governments. I support both women and youth invest in themselves through coaching, leadership development, and through my Pathway to Parity program. I also support governments in building investment cases for the primary healthcare programs through my role in the Financing Alliance for Health. I'm building a global startup and I cannot wait to share tips with you. I'll welcome Diana to introduce herself.
Thank you very much, Angela. Good evening, good morning, good day from wherever you are. My name is Diana Gishaga, and as you might have guessed, yes, I am Angela Gishaga's sister, so hence the similar names, and I'm excited to be on this call with her and of course with Anne. So very quickly, I essentially work with capital seekers. Those are people who are looking for capital. I help prepare them. I help them think about how they're going to grow their businesses, and we help them raise capital. And I also work with investors who are looking for investment opportunities into small and growing businesses in Africa, specifically East Africa and a little bit of West Africa. Been in the markets for 16 years now, capital markets, asset management, private equity, and advisory. And I'm really excited, looking forward to engaging with you all. Thank you.
Anne?
Great, thank you so much, Angela. As you can guess, I am the only non-Yeshaga sister on this call. My name is Anne Juki and I work with DOB Equity as an investment manager. I am based in Nairobi, Kenya. At DOB, we invest in social entrepreneurs across East Africa. So our work involves investing and supporting entrepreneurs who are building scalable, innovative businesses in Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda, Tanzania, and Burundi. Thank you so much for joining us, and I'm excited that you could join.
Now that we know the panelists, in terms of the webinar format, you're all on mute, but though you are all on mute to avoid background noises, we would love to keep the conversation as interactive as possible. To this end, we will continue using the chat box. So as we continue with our discussion, please leave your comments in the chat box. If you have any questions for the panelists today, please use the Q&A box at the bottom to type in your questions. At the end of our discussion, we will make time to answer these questions. We are already around 70 participants, so we'll try and answer as many questions as we can, but we are also open to following after this particular webinar to have conversations on the questions that you will raise. We will also be launching polls today. We would like to understand more on who is within our audience. We would like to hear from you as well so that we can tailor the tips we're about to share with you for them to be more relevant. I would like to provide a brief overview on why we believe that this conversation is important, and then we will go into more details on how to make a strong investment case for yourself and your business so that you can attract investments. In terms of a context, women in Africa are amazing. We have among the highest rates of entrepreneurship in the world, starting with Uganda, Ghana, and Botswana, and Malawi and Angola following right behind those countries. This means that women are positioned to advance the economic and social development on the continent through their own entrepreneurship. However, we face significant challenges in not just scaling, but sustaining the businesses we have grown. Many females in Africa who are leading businesses have gone into business out of necessity rather than out of opportunities within the marketplace. Globally, female-founded startups receive less than 5% of total investments by venture capitalists. In Africa, male-owned enterprises have up to 6 times more capital than female-owned enterprises. And of course, this then impacts the growth of female businesses, and then obviously then impact the profits that female businesses are able to accrue. From these statistics, it appears that women who lead businesses in Africa are not being seen. We seem to be overlooked and undervalued, and that needs to change. The goal of this particular webinar is to share tips on how women entrepreneurs can, 1, invest in themselves as leaders of enterprises, 2, invest in their businesses so that they can be investor ready, and 3, attract investments for scalability and for sustainability. The tips we will share are applicable in general. However, particularly during this crisis period, they will be even more important. We as a panel are committed to supporting you to build your leadership and your business resilience. We will start the conversation on this webinar, but the goal is to actually continue this conversation post the webinar through the networks, online, and also through social media. As promised, we want to hear from you. So as you continue putting the chat box, which country you're coming from and which sector you represent, I would like to launch the first poll. And in this poll, I encourage you to share with us what is your leadership experience, especially right now during the COVID period. As a leader in your business, how has COVID affected you? Please select what is relevant for you across the spectrum of experiences. We would like to understand where we are as people who are leading businesses on this call. We will have a few seconds to do this, maybe around 5 or 10 seconds. I encourage people on the call to please select the option that is most applicable for them in terms of, as a leader, how has COVID affected you? I see a lot of responses coming in. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for voting. Some 10 more seconds. Thank you. Thank you for voting. I'll be closing the poll. We have about 50% who have responded. 60%, great, we're doing well. So in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1, I'll end the poll. So where do we stand in terms of the particular audience? As you can see, it seems a good majority of us are quite optimistic, which is wonderful. You know, most of us believe that we will survive, but we will have to make difficult decisions and take drastic measures. There's still quite a bit of concern among the participants today, but everyone seems to be very proactive in putting measures in place. Great. Thank you for your responses to that particular call. So we'll start in terms of building resilience in leadership. First of all, why should entrepreneurs invest as leaders of enterprises? Why should they invest in themselves? Whether you're an entrepreneur or someone who's leading an organization, or whether you're an intrapreneur within a company, personal development is the best investment that you can make in yourself. Especially for people who are leading businesses and small businesses, you as the entrepreneur are the brand of your product and the service offering you have. In the early years, when you don't have a strong or long performance track record, investors are banking on you as the leader of that organization and business to meet the objectives that have been set forward. Business can actually be very unpredictable, and I think in the past few months, we've experienced this as well. So focusing on something that is within your control, like your own personal development, can actually be very empowering. And I'm glad to see that people on the call, though concerned, are very optimistic that they will survive the current situation. If there's one point I want to make in my part of this discussion, it's this. As an entrepreneur, you are the foundational investment case for your business. As the entrepreneur, you are the foundational investment case for your business. So what do we actually mean by investing in yourself? There are many ways to invest in yourself, but today I would like to focus my tips on 5 key areas, what I'll refer to as my 5 E's. The first E I want to focus on today is enlighten yourself. What are we meaning by enlightening yourself as a business leader and an entrepreneur? Enlightening yourself refers to self-awareness, building your self-awareness. Who are you really? Who are you? What is your purpose and what is your mission? What values do you hold strongly and would you want to see reflected within the business and enterprise that you're setting up? Even though you've already started a business and you're beginning to grow your business, self-awareness is a journey and continuous reflection on who you are, what you stand for, and if your values are actually evident in your business, can continue adding value throughout your business journey. There are several resources available to you to support you in your self-awareness journey. You can get a coach. You can use a lot of online tools, and we will be sharing some of those resources after this webinar. The second thing is be clear on your motivation behind starting your business. Is there a real need and opportunity for what you want to present to the market, or are you in business out of necessity? Remember, businesses are about solving problems. Will you be enjoying what you're doing today, even during the hard times? It's valuable to spend time at the beginning of setting up your business to understand your why and motivation of your business, as well as to choose something that really sets your heart on fire. Entrepreneurship is not easy, but it can be satisfying. When you start, you'll be wearing multiple hats. Your HR, your CO, your office cleaner, your logistics, your social marketing director, and it can actually put a big strain on you. A few recommendations I have in terms of how to cope with the multiple hats, and it's something I'm continuously learning myself as well. One, cultivate a positive mindset. Believe that you can, and make up your mind to succeed in your business. When you have a positive mindset and have positive energy, this energy then emanates to the team that is looking up to you, and also emanates to your investors who are looking to partner with you in your growth journey. My second recommendation is be courageous. Manage your fear of failure and also your fear of success. Take calculated risk. Look at a situation, assess the risk within that situation, do the pros and cons, make a decision and act. We also need to ask for what we need and want to grow our business. If you know that you need $50,000 when you're fundraising, ask for $50,000 and then negotiate with the investor. If a decision that you've made in business doesn't work, bounce back and make a different decision. I'm not implying it's easy in any way, but it is actually possible to bounce back. The ability to be resilient and adaptable is key for sustainability of your business. The third recommendation I have, and as I say it, I am saying it to myself as well, take care of yourself. Remember, you, me, we are our foundational investment case in what we are trying to build. Yes, there is so much to do, but there's only so much that can get done in one day. Make a conscious decision to prioritize your physical and your mental health. Eat, sleep, exercise, yes, exercise well. Rest, and rejuvenate. Manage how you react to negative situations. Stress, anger, frustration, they come to you on a kind of rolling basis. What I've seen working really well, anything as simple as breathing exercises. When you're stressed in a situation, breathing, being mindful, taking a short walk. When you're angry or frustrated with a situation, take up boxing, vent out that extra energy and emotion. The fifth recommendation is spend time to build out your support networks. Your family, your friends, they are the ones who hold you through both the good times and also the not so good times. When things are, going not too well, they motivate you. When things are going very well, they ground you and keep you hopeful. A mantra I tell myself, and I tell those people that I do coach as well, understand that you are enough. You are enough. I am enough. You are enough. Even as we continue in this journey of improving ourselves and growing, At all points of our business growth, who you are is enough. What you do is enough. And what you have is enough. This is how you continuously cultivate a space in your mind and who you are to be content, but it doesn't mean being complacent. So we've enlightened ourselves, the first E, we've invested in self-awareness. What's the second thing we can do to invest in ourselves? Educate yourself. Educate yourself. Remember, you are HR, you're finance, mostly, especially at the beginning of a business when you don't have the resources or you're still trying to build your team, you will be playing multiple roles. Now, I'm in no way implying that you need to be an expert in all these areas, but you do need to have basic skills. Educate yourself. If you're in an extremely technical area, you may need to get additional education in that area. But in this day and age, you know, there's tons of free resources online, anywhere from Professor YouTube to, you know, webinars, free courses. If you've never seen the corridors of Harvard, you can go online and get a free certificate from an Ivy League university. So much has been made available to us. As you grow your business, you might need specific and tailored support. And there are numerous masterclasses, entrepreneur boot camps, incubators, accelerators that can give you specific support in areas tailored for building businesses. I would like to caution us as well, as we think about building these technical skills around HR and also finance, let's not forget to build soft skills, communication, soft skills, how to pitch, how to be resilient, how to be adaptable in business, so that we can have a balance in terms of the skills that we build. So the first E was enlighten yourself. The second E is educate yourself. And now the third E, or rather pair of E's, is experience and expertise. So when we're educating ourselves, we're basically building book smarts. And the book smarts help you identify what you need and want to do. However, as we all know, life, building a business, does not read the books to the letter. And so the street smarts happens when you start actually setting up your business and you're figuring out, how do I do this? When do I need to do what? By how much? And that is what experience is. Experience is about figuring out, how do I keep doing what I need to do? And how do I focus on growing what is important? As you're gaining experience, what I would encourage us to also be reflecting on is getting better at what we're offering, the expertise. And in terms of expertise, we should be reflecting on not just about, oh, this is what I'm doing and I'm doing this to get this number of sales, but how do we then develop a track record of performance and also develop a business story? What that means is, in as much as you are in the business of sales, for example, I saw some of us are joining and are from the agricultural sector. If you're in the agricultural sector, you need to know, these are the volume of sales that I have per month. Over and above that, remember now more than ever, investors are very cautious about not just the economic return, but also the social return on investment. So what's your story as an entrepreneur? If you're selling vegetables, it's awesome to say that you sell about 10,000 tons per month. But beyond that, what else can you say about your story? How is selling vegetables improving the lives of your customer and improving the lives of people who are beneficiaries of your service? The third thing around experience and expertise is, it takes time, so be patient with the process. But as you're being patient with the process, You need to hustle, 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 and grind. The fourth E is exposure for excellence. And this is built on the premise that no one person, no one entrepreneur has monopoly of knowledge and experience. To understand what really works, focus on learning and collaborating with other people. The more you see, the more you learn, and the more you grow. Commit to a culture of being exceptional and keep improving your product and your offering and your services as you go along. You cannot be offering in this day and age the same service for 5 and 10 years and be able to maintain your market. You need to keep innovating and improving what you're offering. Another way of committing to a culture of being exceptional is to identify mentors early on in building your enterprise. Mentors are extremely valuable in very many ways. One, they help you understand the practical landscape that you're operating in. They help you learn from their mistakes so that you actually don't have to make the same exact mistakes. Mentors also can help give you access to the relationships that they have, and that will help you fast track the growth of your business. Join associations, go for events, meet people, and follow up on those leads. That will help you identify synergies with other people, and through collaborations, you can also grow. As you're starting out, your goal is let's keep the costs low and let's start getting bigger margins. One way of keeping costs low is looking for flexible ways and spaces of working. Why not set up offices in a co-working space? Not only are you going to keep your costs low, you will meet other entrepreneurs who are able to give you services at more affordable prices, and you can actually find opportunities to collaborate and grow. And leverage technology so that you're able to get your name out there. Now we've enlightened ourselves, we've educated ourselves, we've gained experience and expertise. We are now gaining exposure. The last E stands for extravaganza. What does extravaganza actually mean? It simply means celebrating every milestone and achievement you have made, no matter how small it looks like in the long-term plan you have. That new client or contract, getting your product in a new supermarket. When you celebrate what you've achieved, it builds confidence in who you are and reinforces your commitment to succeed. Own your accomplishments. Don't shy away to communicate what you have achieved. And as you continue to celebrate, you will also begin to understand that you actually can survive in business. So these are the 5 ways that I recommend that we can start investing in ourselves. There's so many other ways we can invest in ourselves. And I would like to hear in the chat box as well, if you have any other ways you think we should also be investing in ourselves so that we can all be learning and sharing from each other. Which of these 5 E's struck you the most, and which do you commit to cultivating the next 3 or 6 months? It's important to join webinars and learn, but also commit to action as we continue with improving ourselves as entrepreneurs. If you have any questions, again, a reminder, kindly type them in the Q&A box at the bottom. And at the end of the discussions, we will try our best to answer as many as we can, but we can also follow up with you after. Now that we've identified how to invest in ourselves as the foundational investment case of our business, let's hear from Diana on how you can invest in your business so as to attract investors. We will kick off Diana's session with a poll, and then Diana will come in. So please respond to the poll that is coming in front of you. The poll we will be kicking off as well will be around business. And the first question would be, you will see it right now. What 3 key challenges are you struggling with as a business? Please choose what the 3 key challenges you're struggling with as a business. We'll have about a minute for us to respond to this poll. I'm beginning to see people responding to the poll. Thank you very much. What are those challenges that you're struggling with a business? And what are those areas of support that you would require assistance as well? Thank you for those who are voting. We have about 45 seconds as well for this voting to take place. Are you struggling with reduced sales? Customers are not paying? Your products are not available? What's the struggle that we're experiencing? Where would you specifically need support? Great, about 50% of us have responded. I'll just allow another 30 seconds for people to get their votes in. Great, thank you so much. 15 seconds to go. Really nice seeing what is coming through with the votes. Awesome. Thank you for your responses. Diana, that's what people are saying as I hand over to you. Welcome, Diana.
Thank you very much, Angela. I think that was a very good introduction, and what it does is it'll segue very well into the next aspect that I am going to be handling, which is 2 things. The first is just to demystify and explain what investor readiness is all about. And then the second thing is to explain why this is important for your business. And to set the context, the reason why we are talking about investor readiness is in the background of what happened in terms of private investments into businesses in the year 2019. We had about 198 deals. 198 deals taking part on the continent, and those are only the deals that we know that have been reported, worth $3.4 billion. Yes, United States dollars. So one of the things that we keep hearing, especially within the SME space, from entrepreneurs, where are these investors? Why can't I get investment? What is the problem? What need I do? And surprisingly, from the investor side, they're asking, where are the women entrepreneurs? Where are the local entrepreneurs? So there's a mismatch. So if I achieve nothing else today, it will be just to demystify the point of what investor readiness is and why it is important for your business. So we'll jump straight into it. Investor readiness, it can just be defined as essentially the process that you take to prepare yourself as the owner of the business or as a management within the corporate, your team, because no one person is able to execute these things by themselves, and preparing your business, the entity that is supposed to exist into perpetuity. And what are we preparing those 3 aspects for? 1, you're preparing for growth. Contrary to popular belief, even if you see even some of the most successful entrepreneurs succeeding and it looks haphazard, there's always a method to the madness. So you're preparing for growth. And number 2, what you're preparing for is the process of raising capital. It could be from traditional sources, it could be the banks, it could be from non-traditional sources, and that is what we will holistically refer to as private capital. People who provide private debt, people who come in and take up shareholding in your company, people who provide grants to you. So we are essentially looking at that entire spectrum. So why is this particular aspect important? The one key thing, and I'm happy we have Anne to represent investors on this call, that investors keep complaining about in terms of why they're not investing in sufficient numbers of women-led businesses or local entrepreneur businesses is that term of investor ready. They say the businesses are not yet investor ready. So I'd like to quickly throw in a quote. Are we going to sit back and say, okay, this is the end of it? No. And to quote Shirley Chisholm, she said, you don't make progress by standing on the sidelines, whimpering and complaining. You make progress by implementing ideas. So what we are doing on this call today is to demystify investor readiness so that we can prepare and start addressing the gap that we've seen in the market with regards to lack of sufficient investment in women-led entrepreneurs and local founders. So very quickly, the first thing we start with is, what is the first thing you need to do as an investor when you're planning to undertake an investor readiness process? Analyze your business. That is the first thing. So what does analyze your business start with? The first thing you need to do is demystify what growth means to you personally. Growth can mean either increase in revenues. For some people, it could be just improving their margins. For some people, it could be working from a different region. Others, it could be working in different sectors or having a diversity in terms of products and services. You need to be clear what growth means to you. And then, because you have already thought about what growth should mean to you, you look at your industry, and this is looking at who your fellow competitors within the same space are. Based on what you're seeing or what you want to do, has anyone within your space been able to achieve some of the aspects that you're thinking about? If you are in Nairobi and say you want to expand to Nigeria, are there people who are working in West Africa, or are there people working outside your country? If yes, what have they done, and what can you implement as part of what you have seen? And if not, is there a reason that is industry-wide, not company-specific, industry-wide, preventing you from going into these other countries? Quick example, pharmacies. What we tend to have is pharmacies tend to be either country-specific or region-specific. Why region-specific? Say, for example, if I open a pharmacy, there's a likelihood, or a legal practice, there's a likelihood that we have an East Africa-based association that allows the recognition of my skills. Then I'm able to operate within other East African countries. So maybe the reason your pharmacy has not yet, or might not manage to go into Nigeria or West Africa, is because of the legal environment. So it's always important to analyze. People have tried it before. And I always tell people, everyone has ideas. It's the execution that sets us apart. Then the second thing you need to do is, once you understand the growth that you're likely to have and how it is possible within your industry, you need to map it. So one of the things, and we're in the advisory business, I cannot tell you how many times when I ask people, okay, so what are you thinking about in terms of growth? They're so excited and they tell me, oh, next year we want to double our revenues, we want to slash our costs by 70%, I want to be in at least 5 other countries within the next 5 years. I'm not telling you not to dream. P. Diddy, and I like to quote musicians sometimes, says, close your eyes and dream, but open and see. Okay, so you have these wonderful plans within the next 5 years. How realistic are they? And what I talk about planning from an investor readiness perspective is not an academic exercise. It is an practical exercise. So if I want to say go and start PES in Nigeria in 2 years, what does that involve? It means I walk back and I start to ask myself, what do I know about the Nigerian market? What sort of advisory firms are there? What's the nature of the client that they serve? Is that the same client I am currently serving? Is that the client with the same pain point that are similar to the people in East Africa? Do I require regulations? Will I go and start from afresh? Will I go and have a joint venture with somebody else? And what sort of requirements or certifications do I need to do? What will it cost? If I'm the owner of the business, I am based in Kenya, operating within East Africa, how do we manage Nigeria? How do we either grow the team internally because they have the brand experience and they know what the brand promise is, and have them grow to be able to lead Nigeria? So it is just having a practical understanding of what that growth means, and then looking internally and looking at your cash, or your financial position, looking at your people position, and most importantly, your social capital position. People tend to underestimate the power of networks within this specific industry that we work with. So the next thing that I'd say is, that is investor readiness with reference to growth in an ideal situation. However, I cannot ignore the fact that we are currently operating within a pandemic scenario. Most of the country, in fact, all of the entire world has been impacted by COVID in some way or the other. Even there's no one country that can say we are immune from COVID. So we've understood, or I've highlighted basically what the growth strategy is when it's a normal investor readiness situation. What does investor readiness spell for a COVID-related scenario? It is understanding what aspect of your business model has been impacted and which aspect has the greatest risk to your business being able to continue. Is it the people you're serving, your customer segment? You are a business-to-business business. That's funny. You were a B2B business. You used to sell hand sanitizers in 50-liter, 100-liter jerry cans to hospitals, to pharmacies. It was very easy. You delivered from your factory. They were received. They ordered large quantities. Your payments were in 45 days. Comes this COVID pandemic. Suddenly, Diana wants to be able to find hand sanitizer in small sachets that can fit into her purse in the nearest retailer. You do not have relationships with this supply and logistics firm. Your new customer might not really understand how to differentiate a high quality from a mediocre sanitizer. Your customer might not be maybe able to understand what sets you apart, whereas your business-to-business customers were able to understand because of the long-term relationship. So what are we talking about in terms of how does your business model need to be relooked at during this COVID period? And there are various segments. What I will say is, the first thing is, in terms of the entire model, the customer segments, the value proposition that you have, take time to understand the trends within your industry. Some of you might be having a setback, mainly because your customers are not able to access your goods, or you can't access your raw materials, so you're not able to produce. Take time to assess, how is this impacting me and what do I need to do? The other thing that one needs to ensure is understand critically if your customer pain point has changed. And I'll repeat that. Has your customer pain point changed? So for example, if you're in the tourism industry and you have hotels, the business of tourism is not the physical hotel structure. It is giving people an opportunity to travel, discover new things for rest and relaxation. This is COVID. We are working from home, we're educating from home, and still continuing to do everything else. The day starts when we open our eyes to when we close our eyes. We are tired. We are cabin fever, we want to travel. So the pain point is still existing. However, what is the barrier? We cannot access. So how do you as a business provide the solution to the pain point? How are you going to provide me with a feeling of rest and relaxation coming from your experience within the tourism industry? I'm not able to access your hotel, yes, but what else can you do? So that is what we are thinking about. So look at your business model, look at what area has been impacted the most, and make remedies to address some of these challenges. The next thing we need to do when we understand what the path to growth is, we understand what sort of growth we are looking at, we've made out the milestones. The next thing that we need to do is you need to map what sort of resources you require. And I'll be very emphatic on this. Resources is not just the money. And I keep telling people, it's not the money. It is the people, it is the infrastructure. So what does an investor readiness entail when it comes to understanding the resources you need? It is looking at that growth path that you have charted as a business. I need to come from point A to point B to point C. What do I need to be able to achieve this? And we'll start with the people. We always joke, and even in academic circles, entrepreneurs are in the process of kicking themselves out of their businesses. Why? The business tends to morph. Where you started in the beginning, your business requirements keep changing, and no one entrepreneur has all the skills required. There are entrepreneurs who are very good at starting. They like the challenge. But once things have kicked off, it is not as exciting for them. There are those entrepreneurs who can't start, but they're very good in terms of when someone starts, they're able to put the building blocks. So just tying it in with what Angela had talked about self-awareness, understand the sort of entrepreneur that you are. What am I good at? I am a good starter, but I can't execute. So surround yourselves with people who can execute. Or I am a good person in executing, I simply deplore the idea of starting something. Then get someone who has that energy. The other thing that you need to do as an entrepreneur is objectively look at how the business is growing and say, if this business is going to look like this 10 years from now, I will likely be unable to still manage it well. So what do? Do you give up? No, this is a business that you have started yourself and you have developed. What we say in investor readiness is, as this growth is happening, chart your growth as the entrepreneur. Know that if I reach 0.5 or year 5, then I will go up. I am moving to probably a board level, or I am going to give myself a docket that I am passionate about. Maybe I'm passionate about acquisitions, I'm passionate about customers, I'm passionate about business development. Does it really matter if someone else is called CEO? You own the business. They are working for you. And part of this investor readiness process is to look as an entrepreneur and say, I need to prepare for this sort of growth. Or sometimes what an entrepreneur is doing is preparing for exiting the business. It is important to understand, are you in this business to make money? And of course, I'm not talking about regular money because money has to be made, but are you planning to become rich from it? Or are you in this business so that you can grow it? We call it the king or rich paradigm. Let me quickly explain. When you start a business, when you're owning it, you will have opportunities to grow, but because you'll never have all the capital required at that particular point as a lump sum, your growth is tapered. So you own it, but you're not growing as fast as you can. So 10 years from now, you still own 100% or 50% if you're 2, but your growth is tapered. When you bring in investors, you're letting go of that growth. And someone is saying that 5 million, 10 million that you needed over the next 10 years to generate, to grow your business, I am giving it to you today. But in exchange, you give me shareholding. So what are you doing? You're getting the money you need as a lump sum now. That growth that will happen in 10 years, we are squeezing it into a period of 5 years. But what is the point that we've had to give up? It is share ownership. So the reason we say map this and see what is needed, see where you're going to source it from, is for you to understand, am I very focused on owning 100% of my business? If so, then that is fine. Grow your business with whatever available capital from debt, from internally generated funds. Or am I focused more on the growth rather than the ownership? I'd rather own a smaller piece of a bigger pie. Then fine, work towards that. One of the things that we always talk about when you're mapping your capital is you need to understand when you're raising capital to fund your growth, your business has not stopped generating money. And I always caution people, raise just what you need. Don't take extra money. It is not free. There's a charge to it. Whether someone is providing you patient capital, whether someone is just giving you debt, there's a charge to it. So, or rather a cost to it. So don't take more money than you need. There's something we call an overfunded business. It's like trying to get a lady to give birth in 1 month by having 9 of them. The process is still going to take 9 months, right? What you'll end up with is 9 children. So be clear about the uses of funding. I always have conversations where an entrepreneur will come and say, I think I need maybe 5 million. And I'm like, okay, let's break it down. What do you need the 5 million for? Oh, I need machinery to expand. Okay, what's the cost of the machinery? What's the cost of the infrastructure? What's the cost of the support structure that's going to come in? What's the cost of additional people? What's the additional cost in terms of maybe extra licenses or utilities that you'll use? And then when you analyze all this, they tell me 5 million. Okay, your business has not stopped generating money. Borrow what you need. Secondly is match the capital to the use. If you're going to start a factory and it's going to take you 2 years and you're getting debt, where is that interest going to be repaid from? And I always say, match your capital to the use. If you're not able to make those interest payments, but that factory is critical for you, explore other sources because debt might not be it. Then the other thing we always say as part of mapping capital and looking at your capital needs, understand which investor you need to be engaging. So due diligence, the people who are going to be giving you that particular funding. Is it a private equity firm? Who have they invested in? What are their sources of capital? What are their targets? How long is the investment period? What are they seeking to give you? For how long? And what other benefit are they giving you in addition just to funding? Talk to other portfolio companies they've invested in. How is the relationship? How are these guys? When things are tough, how do they help out? During COVID, and I'll just be very quick because we've looked at investor readiness in terms of just mapping in a growth strategy or situation. In COVID, investor readiness requires you to just look at the short term and medium term. What is my funding need over the next 6 months or over the next 12 months? Look at what are your costs. In, say, we are now in June. In June, I need this much. In July, August, September, October. Excellent. Now you know what your costs are. People keep coming and asking, how do I know what to cut at what point? Because it must be, it's scary to see your revenues dipping, at least for those whose businesses are not doing well, and yet your cost is still the same. What we do is we encourage people to say, have an objective exercise and say, at a bare minimum, what does my business need to survive? I might not need all my employees, but remember, it's costly to always rehire. So look at those employees who are critical to the business. Focus on them, see how you can keep them in, and then use the various methods such as unpaid leave, maybe work days that can be compensated later, then ramp down the salary, don't just cut it off all at once, especially for those key cogs that you will need. Because remember, COVID is here, it has impacted us, but they'll still be the company even after COVID. The second thing is do an objective exercise where you look at, if I am in this revenue, these are the things that I'm going to cut off. If I reach this milestone, then as hard as it costs, as hard as it's going to be, I'm going to have to cut additional costs. So what we say is once you've mapped that revenue need, look at your cost milestones and then keep observing this over the period of time. So what we have done in this phase is we've understood mapping your capital needs in a normal scenario and within a COVID scenario. The one thing I'll quickly jump into is to say, understand what type of revenues you have. Are you someone who has prepaid sales? What are prepaid sales? Essentially, you receive all your money at the beginning of the year, and then you have to make sure that your costs are catered for. If you're in prepaid sales, take the initiative. Don't let your customers come to cancel their subscriptions or whatever it is they've paid. Come back and do your analysis and say, if it's going to cost me this much to run this business, what non-cash out? So non-cash out, you're trying to minimize cash going out of the business. What non-cash value can I give to my clients? Is it extra months at the end of the day, or can I give them an extra free month? How will I also add value so I'm able to maintain the cash in the business? Another thing is if your cash cycle is 40, 45 days, 60 days, the longer it is outstanding, the more risk of non-collection. So look for ways of invoicing that, discounting that invoice, or even approach the company and enter into negotiations about a cash upfront for a certain discount that you will receive. So the next thing, of course, is to prepare the owners prepare the managers for this growth or capital raise. Why is this particular aspect important? Because when you're preparing people for growth, everyone needs to be on the same tune. We are going left, we are going left. They need to understand the role that they are playing within that growth phase. Even the person on the factory floor, if you are supposed to ask him, why is your job important? Because he understands what the long-term growth is. If you're raising capital, the person on the factory floor need not be able to do a financial model, but if an investor walks in the factory floor and asks him, we are raising, you people want to raise money for X, is this critical? The guy should not burst out laughing and say, good Lord, why would we want to do that? And just like that, the whole vision dies because of that person on the factory floor who has interacted with the investor. So it's important for you to just prepare the team, and the next thing to do is do your documentation. And I really emphasize on this. Investor readiness is about having your documentation and processes in place. I understand you're an entrepreneur. I know you just didn't wake up and decide that you want to go to Nigeria. You did your research. There's something you did. However, as an external investor, if you've not documented it, how do I know that when I give my money into this business, that you will make the decisions as we've agreed? Corporate governance. Who makes decisions, to what extent, how can they bind the company? So one of the things we're doing as part of investor readiness in documentation is putting in place the processes and necessary documents to give investors comfort that decisions are made well within this company. Lastly, why is investor readiness critical for women? Because this is a WIA webinar. So we are not only focusing, we're not saying the men step aside, we're just saying, why is it important for women? We face a lot of biases, cultural biases, general biases, and unfortunately, investor biases. I think the thing to talk about or communicate is biases sometimes might not be things that we are self-aware of. It could be just the way we believe things should be a certain way. So for example, if you're very educated, if it's a lady, and I have I have clients who will deal with this, because they were very educated, they were not expected to go into the agricultural sector. So everyone thought, it's a hobby, let's give them time and see if it works for them. Societal. If you're from maybe a certain religion, people don't expect to see you in the workplace. So already there's a bias or a feeling of you're not supposed to be here. Gender biases within the workplace. Most people end up saving from their jobs to start entrepreneurship. But when we have a gender pay disparity within the workplace, where you're earning significantly less, what does that mean for you as a woman? Your savings are less. So when you start your enterprise, you're starting on a smaller scale. Thirdly, there's the issue of networks. Most people are able to round up their networks to raise money for them to be able to invest. Men are very good at this. For women, unfortunately, this is something that we are not very good at. We are not as networked. So what does this mean? When we start our businesses, they tend to be smaller, the track records are smaller, the milestones are smaller, so that eventually by the time we are reaching to talk to investors, they're looking at two businesses and wondering, why are these two businesses in the same sector that was started at the same time so distinctly different? That is one of the reasons. Investor biases. Please, even as we move toward gender lens investing, and I always tell people, gender lens investing does not mean we are giving free money because you're a woman. No, we are saying we understand they're female entrepreneurs and you have challenges, and we are putting aside a pot of money to invest in your business. Please note, not grant, invest, meaning the business has to make sense by itself. So when we're talking about investor biases, as much as maybe investors are now able to put aside a pot for money, for women specifically, remember there are also ecosystem structural challenges. If you go to, say, a bank and the requirements that you'll be given as a woman, you will find that they're more onerous because there's a higher risk perception when it's a woman coming to ask for the money, which is ironic because we're also known as the best payers. So as we try and sort out those structural biases, from an investor readiness point, are we going to stand aside and say, oh, the system doesn't work, there's no need for that? No, investor readiness for women is saying, I will prepare myself to deal with these biases. I will prepare myself, give myself the necessary knowledge to enable me overcome some of these biases, whether it's a cultural, societal, or an ecosystem bias. That is also why investor readiness is important for you as women. So you already know what you're going to face. You prepare to answer it, and not answer it, you also prepare to deal with it. So in summary, what is investor readiness? It is, and I know I've rushed through this, it is the entire process through which you're preparing yourself, your team, and your business to grow or to raise money or to do both. Why is it important? Because at the end of the day, you will take a shorter time to raise the right amount of capital, the right capital from the right people who will help you achieve your growth and your capital raising targets. So I want to end with a quote. Encourage all entrepreneurs, local entrepreneurs, and especially the women entrepreneurs who've joined this call. It's a quote from Oprah. Visualize your highest self and start showing up as her. Visualize your highest self, your successful self, the person who is going to be able to execute this growth and successfully raise that capital. Show up as her. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Diana. That's been very insightful. We've already covered around the business leader as an investment case, and then building your business to be investor ready. As we get ready to listen to Anne, who represents an investor and can give us actually from an investor's perspective what they're thinking and looking at. Please keep those questions coming. We see quite a few of them in the Q&A box. Thank you. There are some in the chat box. I would encourage us to type our questions in the Q&A box for easier tracking for all of us. As we welcome Anne to speak to us about from a investor perspective, I would like to launch a third poll, which will be focused on attracting investment. It would be good for us to get a sense of how long some of the businesses have been operating, and which, if you're an entrepreneur, where the funding cycle in your business you are. So I'm launching the third poll for the entrepreneurs on the call today. Let us know how long you've been operating. Even if it's less than 1 year, we celebrate you. If you're 5 years, we'll also celebrate you. If you're thinking about entrepreneurship and you are in a company, so you're an intrapreneur, as you cultivate yourself for entrepreneurship, please let us know. And also let us know if you are actually raising funds, at what point in that funding cycle are you, and what your experience has been. I'll put this up for a few more, about 30, 45 more seconds. I see we are voting. Thank you so much. We are now almost at 30% of us who are voting. Thank you so much. I like the fact that it's written, I'm not yet an entrepreneur. It's okay to also be an intrapreneur, but if there is that burning desire in yourself as well, it would be good for you to also find out how to improve. Thank you so much for those who are voting. I'll give it a few more seconds as well. Remember the questions in the Q&A box. We are coming to the Q&A session after Anne walks us through from an investor's perspective. Diana and I can speak from either a startup perspective, and Diana obviously from preparing businesses for investment, but there's nothing like actually listening to an investor to tell us what is it that they actually listen to. Thank you for those who are voting, 60%. I think we're doing very well. I'll just give about 5 more seconds to go before we can see where we stand. 5 more seconds. Thank you, everyone. And Anne, I would like to show you what is the profile of people on today in terms of how long they've been in business and in terms of where in the funding cycle they are in terms of their business. Is that okay, Anne?
Yes, wonderful. Thank you so much.
Awesome.
It looks like we have a good mix. It's about 40% are not entrepreneurs, and the rest are entrepreneurs in varying stages of their journey. And then we also saw that with regards to capital, roughly half of the people who are attending this have not yet raised capital. So we have a wonderful mix. And can we just celebrate just the wonderful lessons that have been shared with us by both Angela and Diana? Thank you so much. I have learned a lot as well. I'll start off by saying that I am not an entrepreneur, but I've dedicated my career to supporting, enabling, and more recently funding entrepreneurs. So I'll take a slightly different approach, but would like to share with you my career journey, what that has been like for me so far, some of the lessons I've learned along the way, the mistakes as well that I've learned along the way. And hopefully this will be useful for you in your journey as either an entrepreneur or an intrapreneur. So I started off by studying chemical engineering for my bachelor's, or as an African mother would say, for my first degree. I chose engineering because I truly believed in the power of science and technology to do good in society. So enjoyed my studies, worked in that field for many years, and then realized that it really just wasn't enough. So technology wasn't enough as a force for good, and I wasn't sure what was. And though there were some missing pieces of the puzzle there, and I couldn't quite put my finger on it. So then I decided to go to business school, and I went to Duke's Business School, the Fuqua School of Business, and there I met incredible people, people who taught me, people who challenged me, and people who inspired me. And what I really learned from my time at Fuqua was about the power of community. And that's one of the lessons that we'll come back to, is really about the strength of the power of community. And that's really where I begin to see business, not just for the sake of business, but as a force for good in society. After business school, I worked at McKinsey & Company, where I had the pleasure to meet such wonderful people as Angela. And it was a rich Pan-African journey of growth in excellence, growth in relationships, growth in self-care. And that's really the second thing we'll come back to, is self-care, particularly because for many years I did not do it very well. And I loved my time at McKinsey, going everywhere from Casablanca to Cape Town, and have so many lessons there that I'd love to share with you. But that's the second guidepost we'll talk about, is self-care. And then post McKinsey, I joined DOB Equity. And as I mentioned, at DOB, we support social entrepreneurs across East Africa. And it's been a wonderful time there, filled with wonderful people. And I've really had the opportunity to merge my passions of supporting entrepreneurs with the rigor and the analytics that I learned along the journey from being an engineer and from working in consulting. I also learned what it takes to build a very strong investor-ready business, how to scale a business, how not to scale a business. And that's the third thing that I'll share with you, is about building an investor-ready business. Also say at my time at DOB, I've also learned that as an investor, people listen to you, but they also laugh at your jokes when it's not funny. I suppose with great power comes great responsibility to tell good and funny jokes. Okay, good. So we have three things we're going to talk about. We'll start with self-care, then we'll jump to building investor-ready businesses, and then we'll wrap up with the power of community. So self-care. Why is this important? You can't take care of your business until you take care of yourself as an individual. And this is something that Angela had just mentioned as well. And here are a few tools that I have picked up personally over the years. So feel free to tap into these, feel free to develop your own, feel free to also work with people to help you figure out what works best for you. And this could be from a life coach, from a therapist, from your pastor, your imam, your rabbi, your frenemy, just whoever it is that challenges you and knows you well enough to be able to recommend what to do. So first is emotional and spiritual self-care. I think the first thing, which is very simple, is meditation. And sometimes this really can be as simple as breathing in and breathing out. So one of the wonderful tools that I learned during a McKinsey leadership training, and I've taken with me to this day, is really an exercise, very simple, where you breathe in, you hold your breath for 4 to 5 seconds, just listen to your body at that time. But breathe in, hold it, and now just breathe out. And I found that to be a very useful tool for me, whether I am, when I need to relax, and it could be before an important meeting, it could be in between meetings when you are feeling tense or nervous, or a meeting that didn't go so well. It could be if you're feeling turbulence on a plane, assuming we will get to go on planes sometime soon. A second tool that I would like to share about is called morning pages. And morning pages are really, as the name suggests, quite simple. You simply write 2 to 3 pages, first thing in the morning when you wake up, of whatever is on your mind. Doesn't need to be structured, doesn't need to be your dreams, just write 2 to 3 pages. And if you have nothing to write, just write that you have nothing to write. But I found it's a wonderful tool to declutter your brain in the morning and to allow yourself to be creative. And third is silent. Again, deceptively simple, right? Could be when you are out on a walk, you could be saying a prayer perhaps. We spend so much time in our days being bombarded by other people's thoughts and noise. And some of these thoughts are very well meaning. It could be in podcasts, it could be listening to the news, even this webinar, right? These are my thoughts that I'm projecting onto you. But some of that could be noise, it could be toxic, right? So just continually scrolling through social media when it's not healthy, you know, news can sometimes be toxic as well. So just understand what works for you, but just allow yourself to be silent and spend time with your thoughts and be kind to yourself. I think kindness really starts with you internally. Tell you a story, maybe irrelevant for this, but this morning I like to eat a boiled egg every day in the morning for breakfast. And today I was boiling an egg, and as I grabbed the eggs, I dropped 3 eggs, and that's in addition to the egg I'm going to eat. So that's 4 eggs. And if you're like me in this time of Corona, eggs are hard to come by. Good, well, you know, high quality, organic, traditional eggs, right? They're just really good. And I was really disappointed in myself. I was like, man, I've dropped all these eggs. Maybe I shouldn't eat one. And I was like, you know what? Maybe I'll just be kind to myself. I cleaned up the mess, and I was like, I'll eat my egg as I had planned to. So be kind to yourself. And for the people who are here at home with me, I am sorry about the broken eggs. I know I hadn't told you about this. So again, like I said, we like to make jokes. That's only we laugh to ourselves. And then second is physical self-care. So find time to be active. And sometimes it's not easy. My colleague and friend Vera challenged me to just a 30-minute walk or run every morning. And in some sense, it's the easiest thing to do because it's only half an hour. It's also the hardest thing to do, to just convince myself rather than spending an extra 20 minutes in bed, on warm and cozy bed when it's rainy like this in Nairobi, that instead I should go out and walk. But it's really been a wonderful way to stay fit. And now in this time of Corona, I don't go to the gym. Hopefully you're also staying safe wherever you are. And so I watch a lot of YouTube videos. One of my favorites is Chloe Ting. And you're done with Chloe Ting's exercises, your body will love you and hate you at the same time. But just do it. Get enough sleep, eat right, and just, you know, find ways to be physically active. You know yourself and you know what works for you. As a general rule of thumb, I like to remind myself that emotional and spiritual self-care lowers my heart rate, right? Allows me to relax. Physical self-care raises my heart rate, stretches my muscles, right? Stretches me. And that's what I find is the difference between the two. So that's self-care. Let's move to the second one, which is probably why you're here, is about building an investor-ready business. And you might be wondering, okay, fine, what does breathing in and out and eating vegetables and getting enough sleep have to do with investments? It's really quite simple, because the first thing that investors do is that we invest in people. Behind every bold idea, behind every wonderful innovation that's going to save the world, and trust me, every other person that walks in the room is going to save the world, we are investing in a person. We want to be able to just look you directly in the eye and trust you. We want to be able to trust that you will execute. We want to be able to trust that you will stick to your vision even when things get tough and your business has to pivot 5 times. We want to be able to trust that you will come to us openly when you fail, because failure happens and we don't talk about that enough. And we also want to trust that you will build a strong and winning team around you, because no one can do this alone. So invest in people. 2, investors invest in a story. So we want to hear the narrative of what it is you are doing as an entrepreneur and what your business is doing as well. So what's the narrative that you're selling to us? And remember, with every story, with every narrative, there's the story and then there's the reality, right? So there's the PowerPoint deck, and then there's actually what we are seeing in your actions and what we are hearing in the market. If you come to our office and someone brings you a cup of tea or a freshly squeezed juice and you don't say thank you, I will probably not invest in you, because I think you probably wouldn't respect your customers and you might not respect the people around you, right? So your actions come from your thoughts come from your beliefs, and your beliefs come from your values. And that's very important to investors. The third thing that investors want to see is that we invest in numbers, right? So tell us a good story and that's great, and we'll feel all nice and warm and fuzzy, but at the end of the day, the numbers really have to make sense, right? So we see many business plans and we see very many projections. There's the revenue side, which is always, my business is growing like this and you give me money and it'll grow like that, right? So always lots of hockey stick projections. But on the other hand, you have the costs. And most good investors will focus on the costs as much as, or if not more than, the revenues. And here's why. So you can't control your revenues. That's fine, we understand. You can't force people to buy your widget. People don't have money right now in Corona, but we know that you can really control your costs. You have 99% control over your costs, right? So when we look at your business plan, what we'll see is, one, where are you spending money? What are you investing in? Because where you're spending money tells me more about how your business plans to grow than where you're telling us the revenues are coming from. We don't share this enough with entrepreneurs, but that's some secrets of the trade right here. We also want to know the numbers, right? So what are your unit economics? What is your contribution margin? What's the cohort analysis that shows us what your customers now look like versus 6 months ago? Would you expect them to look like in 6 months and a year from now? The world is changing and you need to be able to change with the world, right? So these resources, a lot of these we'll share about in a follow-up email, but always remember that the story needs to be backed up by numbers. Let's say, for example, your company is on the leading edge and you have invented and are now selling and marketing blockchain-enabled artificial intelligence energy saving cabbage, right? And this cabbage will cure, it will solve global hunger, it will bring around world peace. If you boil it with some turmeric and ginger, it will cure COVID, right? This is it. This is the best thing that the world has ever seen. But it costs you $2 to make that wonderful cabbage, and you can only sell it for $1. I'm sorry, but as warm and fuzzy as this is making me feel, I can't do it, right? I can't invest. So the unit economics, truly, truly need to make sense. And remember, I have an investment committee that I need to convince, and they are not going to be convinced. They might want to eat the cabbage, but they're definitely not going to invest in it. And then lastly, investors invest in the whole building, right? Top to bottom, the entire business. We're not just investing in the shiny and beautiful parts of the business. We're taking a risk on you, just as you are taking a risk in building your business. So don't show us the shiny, nice things and then sweep away everything else in the basement or under the carpet. Remember, we'll do a due diligence and we'll find things. So invest from day one on the right structures. Pay your taxes from day one. Register your company rights. Have all of the permits, everything that you need. It's probably expensive. It's likely going to be a pain. It's tough. But if you do it now, when your business is simple and has one customer, when your business grows to 1,000, 10,000, 1 million customers, you'll already have the building blocks in place. It'll save you a lot of time later to clean things up. So just do it right the first time. We invest in everything. So be open with us, right? So share with us what you've learned as a business, how you've succeeded as a business, and what your failures have been as a business. If you're trying to get us to invest in this wonderful cabbage that solves everything, but then you forget to tell us that you don't actually own the technology, we'll find out, and we probably wouldn't be happy. Investors, generally speaking, do not like surprises, either before we invest, during the investment process, or after we've invested. So please, please be open for us. I will caveat this by saying you need to also know your audience. Just like not every entrepreneur is the same, not every investor is the same. So what are they solving for? Everyone is solving for something. As an entrepreneur, you're solving for something. As an investor, I'm solving for something. I'm also accountable to different people. So just learn about that. I have a partner I need to convince who probably has to convince an investment committee who has to convince the limited partner, right? So there's just lots of moving parts when it comes to investment funds. So not all are the same. It's very embarrassing when you see a presentation and instead of DOB, it has the name of ABC Capital or some other one. So just do your homework, don't copy paste, have a good eye for detail. Good. And then third is the power of community. And I'll close by saying this. I think we understand and we empathize that entrepreneurship is a long journey. And you know this better than we do. It can be lonely, it can be tough. It's not always glamorous. And you know this more than we do, particularly during the pandemic, that the lows are very low and the highs can be really few and far between. And whether or not you're an entrepreneur, we all live in an incredibly complex world that at this time is really dealing with issues of injustice and equality and accountability or the lack thereof. Many of us live in countries that just don't have the institutions to support us. Not trying to be political, but I'm sure if you took an average age of the youth ministers across Africa, they are probably not institutions as well. But if you're here, chances are that you're already part of a community. It's important to build partnerships in your business, but also partnerships for yourself as an individual. And that's wonderful. So find a group of people that protects you. Also find a community that challenges you. Find a community that disagrees with you. Find a community that also stretches you and who you are. And if you don't have that, build it one person at a time. I think one of the beauties of this time of Corona, if you can, is that people are so generous with your time. It's so much easier to build relationships virtually now than it ever was with people who are anywhere in the world. So whatever you do, we're not your entrepreneur or or intrapreneur, somewhere in between. And 3, lean into your communities. I hope that's been helpful to you. If you remember nothing else, please don't laugh at other people's jokes. Not funny. You give us a false sense of confidence or thinking that we are important. Thank you so much again for your time, and we welcome your questions.
Thank you, Anne. It's always wonderful to hear from investors, and I think Anne also shared some secrets of the trade. So for all of you who are looking for investments, I hope you are taking furious notes from an investor's perspective. Thanks everyone for putting questions in the Q&A box. So far, I can see about 14 questions here. And so what I'll do, if Anne and Dana are okay with this, I'll just read out some of the questions that are on the box. Some have been addressed to all of us, some have been addressed to some of us. So maybe it makes sense for me to just read out the questions, and then we can see how to answer, allocate across the 3 of us. Does that make sense? Awesome. And just to answer Michael, we will be sharing our contact information in the email that we'll do after the webinar. So that's just to respond to your question. So I'll start. Thank you, George, for your question around how does one learn or unlearn to embrace failure and mistakes in a culture or society that largely identifies and celebrates success. Yes, we all like to be success stories. No one prepares us for failure. We'll talk about that. Thank you, Jared. The normal way of doing business is gone. What adjustments must be made from an investment point of view? And so I think that one would be, maybe Anne, you can speak to that a little bit as well. Thank you as well, Mary Miller. When one wants to change the cost of normal business from pure supplies to manufacturing, the thought is very capital intensive, and most times it does not pick. I would wonder how to get partners in such new ventures. Okay, so I don't know if you're asking the panel to give you ideas, or you're actually looking for partners from the participants, but maybe Diana, you can speak about business pivoting. Then this one I think is best suited as well for Diana from Mercy. Are you able to conduct an effective investor readiness assessment virtually? So I think that's someone who's worried in terms of this COVID situation. Then we have another question. Diana, could you speak a little bit more on the obsession with networking? The Capital Club hype. To cross over to the big leap for businesses and the attendant challenges faced by women, and how to deal with issues around sexism, ageism, patriarchy, and all the other isms that affect female entrepreneurs and women-led businesses. Yes, Jerry, the session is going to be recorded and it will be shared as well also on the WIA YouTube. This one could be for you as well, Anne. At what point do I share with the investor regarding the team plans for the next 5 years? And you can speak to that, Diana, if you want to chime in as well. Thank you, Mercy. After an investor readiness assessment reveals shortcomings that need to be addressed before recommending investor discussions, what happens next? So if you do your due diligence and you find those cobwebs, what are the next step particularly? And the last one for this round maybe would be around, are enough enterprises in Africa operated on the business of unit economics? And I want to combine that with something that also Idora asked earlier. And from your view, Diana and Anne as well, it seems that she was commenting that quite a lot of the investments are coming from outside Africa. What needs to be done to increase intra-African investments as well? So I think we've gotten the first kind of bunch of questions that we can respond to. I'm happy to pick up the question by George, and then I'll hand it over to Diana for the couple of questions, and then maybe to Anne as well. Yes, it's very true. I think a couple of things. One, people don't speak about failure. I think it's a cultural thing, it's a societal pressure. You know, when people are send bios, it's all about, oh, what they've done, all the recognitions. No one is really speaking about the failures that they've had. The truth is, all of us have failed at something, all of us. And there is a need for all of us to be speaking about those failures, because it is human and it is a reality. I think in terms of entrepreneurship and in terms of as well self-awareness, it's all about three things. One, what is your focus? Are you focused and dwelling on the fact that you did not succeed? Or are you focused on the lessons that you need to learn from not succeeding, right? So I think identifying your focus is very important to figure out what to do next. The second thing around failure. So I guess from that question on focus, do not ignore and do not deny failure, right? Because failure is the opportunity to learn so that you can do better next time. Ignoring or denying that failure, you lose out the opportunity for learning and getting better. The second is, you know, the framing of the failure as well in your mind. So beyond learning, what does the failure situation actually mean? How do you actually speak about failures? And I think a challenge I give myself, and I'll also give everyone on this call, is speak a little bit more on about when you didn't actually succeed. I mean, I have failed miserably so many, so many times, you know, and what happens with failure is we fear failure and then we fail and then we are still here and we are surviving and like, okay, yes, I failed, but I'm still here, right? What is your focus as well in terms of the fear of failure is really driven by also not so much the failure itself per se, but what would people say? And so if we make it as open as possible, talking to people and saying, look, I wasn't successful in this particular area, and this is what happened, it can actually be of added value. I know, for example, because I do a lot of recruiting, everyone wants to talk about the highs, the high highs, as Anne was referring to. But I'm always interested to know what happened. I had a very interesting candidate who actually started an enterprise and failed in the enterprise and was coming back to the job market. As someone who hires people, I was very interested in that candidate, because I think the lessons that failure teaches you are so valuable. And for someone to now come and join my startup, having come from a startup that they had put together and that didn't succeed, I know there's a lot that we can learn from that person, just given that experience. And it also takes a lot of courage. It shows courage, it demonstrates courage, it demonstrates resilience, adaptability, it demonstrates flexibility as well. So it also speaks quite a bit to character. So those are the three things I'll talk about in terms of changing the way that society thinks about failure. One, you have to change your focus when you do go through failure. The second is you have to speak about that failure, so that not just acknowledging it to yourself for the lessons learned, but making it commonplace now in society to speak about that failure. And three, also understand that beyond the lessons learned, failure actually speaks to your character to some extent, as long as you've learned those lessons. So around resilience, around adaptability and flexibility, around courage. Diana, you had quite a few questions as well to respond to.
I'll just quickly go through because I'm also conscious of time. Thank you, Mary Miller, for your question. Nice to know you on the call. So your question is, when one wants to change the normal course of business from pure supplies to manufacturing, it's very capital intensive and sometimes it does not peak. Would wonder how to get partners in new ventures. So my immediate feedback to you would be, if you want to backward integrate, which is essentially what you're saying, you've been supplying a product, but now you think you'll be able to do better if you're able to manufacture the product yourself. It's important to first understand what gap you're trying to fill. Is it because you feel you can get better margins if you're actually the one who is manufacturing the product yourself? Is it because there are certain elements with your customer requirements that are not being met by the products you are supplying? So the first thing I'd always say is understand what gap you're trying to address, and then understand who else is working within that gap. So for example, with what you're talking about, moving from supplies to manufacturing, the easiest way to do that is talk to your customers, find out why they deal with certain suppliers, find out what sort of quantities they normally deal with. Because I always say, when you move into the manufacturing is about bulk, being able to deliver bulk. So the other thing I'll say is, yes, it's capital intensive, but there are ways to try this. One of the things I'd propose is, many of the manufacturers currently are not operating at full capacity. You could approach one and have a joint venture where they're able to produce for you. So what does that do? You don't need to buy the equipment yourself. Two, you can order slightly less quantities than you'd need to, and then your ability to go to market will be faster, and you'll be able to understand whether you're able to provide a good without having put in too much capital. With regards to where you can get assistance in terms of partners, other than trying to find out who you can work with, there are institutions such as, yes, the Kenya Industrial Estates. It's a government institution, and their mandate is to encourage manufacturing. So you could reach out to them, because I know they also give people access to space, and they might be able to provide some funding for equipment. So I hope that helps. The second question was from Masi Mutua. Hello, nice to hear you're here. Can one conduct an investor readiness assessment virtually? Funnily enough, we had an engagement with some of our clients where we took them through a questionnaire to ask them what aspects of the investor readiness they felt that we could be able to do online. And so virtually, the things that people have talked about are mapping the processes, understanding the growth, and preparing the documentation can all be done within a virtual environment. You could use either Google Drive, and you could do virtual calls to be able to get an alignment in terms of process and what is required. The only part that we would not really feel can be done effectively, especially for investor readiness, is us understanding the entrepreneur. When people come on calls, we are in a certain way, and sometimes there are lots of tells when you're dealing with assessing an entrepreneur's character. And I always give this story. Anytime when investors such as Anne, you see she's already observing, did you say thank you when you were served the tea? When you're talking, are you shifty? Are you giving off signs that you're lying or something like that? So that part of the investor readiness assessment might not be done as effectively online. The next was on the networking. Can you speak about the obsession with networking, the Capital Club hike to overcome to the big leagues? I will say this, social networks are about depth of relationships. If you have not taken time to cultivate that relationship, it doesn't matter how many times you go to Capital Club, you've not really connected with those people. People will do business with people they have that depth of relationship with. So I always say, some people think it's about going and hobnobbing. No, it's not about being seen. It's about who knows you. And I'm sure many of us on this call, Anne or Angela, will be able to tell you, some of the people who open doors for us are not necessarily the guys who work in Capital Club. It's a person I went to high school with. We are still in touch. They work in the company. They're the finance manager. It could be my friend who our children kick football together every Friday afternoon. And she tells me, oh, I've heard about this opportunity. It could be the investors we work with, and they're like, hey, Diana, this company came to see us. They're not ready. Please follow up on them. Networking is about the depth of your relationship. And sometimes everyone seems to always be targeting the higher end. What is the likelihood that, for lack of a better word, His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta will need something from Diana, even if we happen to know each other? There are many various levels of people who can fulfill that need. I'm not top of his mind. So don't be fooled by the gloss. Focus on the substance. Your networks, a network has to work for you to open doors, open opportunities for you. And that's what social capital is for. Don't dismiss people. You'd be amazed. Even that junior accountant in a big company can be able to tell you of an opportunity that's not known for in the market. How to deal with sexism, ageism, and patriarchy. That needs an entirely new session. But the thing is, I'm going to say this. If you've planned what your potential growth path is, we keep seeing those memes. So-and-so was 50 when he started, was 60, they failed 500 times. If it's your path, you've committed to it, building on what Anne has said, you build the people around you who will support you, because you can't fight everything. There are people who feel if you're single, you're not a good entrepreneur material, or if you're married, how are you going to manage both? Or if you're a certain age, will you have the energy? And they'll keep talking. You just need to be able to say, okay, be aware of some of these barriers, and then start building within yourself networks that can assist you. Things are changing, but they're not changing overnight, and they're not changing fast enough. And this is the environment within which we will end up working in. And I know there was an article today in Business Daily where a lady was saying, if I was not a single parent, I know I would have been 4 or 5 steps up ahead, because it's the nature of the business. I cannot move to Afghanistan with my young son or my young daughter. Unfortunately, these are some of the sacrifices we will continue to have to make, because that is the society within which we operate. But are we rolling over and dying? No, we are making the best with what we have. So I hope I've sort of answered that question. Was there another one for me?
No, I think we can
done.
move on to Anne as well. I'm also conscious of time. Anne, to you.
All right, very good. So realize that we are squeezed for time, so I will answer as many questions as I can. However, Angela will talk about this in a minute, so I'm preempting her, but we will have a Google Doc that we will circulate after this session in a follow-up email as well as in the chat box. So we have other questions that we haven't responded to, and you'd like to address those specifically to either of us, then please feel free to do so. Good, so first question, I believe is this a good time to seek investment? The reality is it's a tough time to seek investment. A lot of markets are drying up, so it's a tough market in which to get capital. Investors, frankly, just are not investing as much as we normally would. I think we see a lot of investors go out in the market and say, yes, we're still investing. And then, you know, when we sort of speak amongst ourselves, you find that that's not really the case. But there are a lot of investors who are still investing. If you have solid fundamentals in your business, some of the things I talked about. So strong unit economics, which yes, we do look at in Africa. If you have, you know, good contribution margins, it's scalable, your incremental cost of growing isn't that high, then people will indeed invest in you. But just be aware that, you know, one, valuations have dipped in this market. So if you thought that somebody thought your business was worth, you know, $5 million 6 months ago, chances are now it'll be worth, in their investors' mind, you know, probably 3 million or less, right? So valuations have taken a big hit, and the terms at which people are giving capital are also much tighter. So if it's debt, then people want to see money coming back sooner. If it's equity, we've talked about valuations, chances are they won't give you all the capital now, they'll probably give you half now, you know, see how the business is doing, and half later. A lot of investors are, frankly, at this time only investing in companies in which they have relationships with. So even if you are not getting capital, this is always a good time to invest in those relationships like we've talked about. Normal way of doing business is gone. I couldn't agree more. What adjustments do you make? I think the first thing is really having an honest conversation with yourself about the fundamentals of your business. Where are areas in which, if possible, your business could pivot? If the costs are going down, what are some other things that you can do with your business? Dan has talked about, you know, maybe making adjustments to your supply chain. If people aren't paying as well as they did your customers, then think about if you can use their invoices to get some form of invoice financing. Can you get factoring? Can you use a letter of credit to get financing as well? So I think it's really a time to be creative. I think in addition, as people are doing projections, it's no longer, this is the world as we know it. No one really knows what tomorrow will bring. So build in scenarios, right? This is the best case scenario. And the best case scenario should always be buffered by, a low case scenario, and make it truly, truly worst case, as well as a medium in between scenario. Why would equity providers start their own businesses? Man, let me tell you, as investors, we are risk averse. We are not wired like entrepreneurs are, which is why some people are there to build businesses, others are there to support businesses. It's just the reality. I probably would not make a very good entrepreneur. I don't know. But trust me, there's different roles for everyone in the ecosystem. There are entrepreneurs, there are investors, there are accelerators, there are hubs, there are co-working spaces. And I think we can all exist happily together without convincing ourselves we can do things that we are not wired to do. I think Diana covered the question around doing virtual due diligence, but I will say that it is tough. As an investor right now, doing virtual due diligence, there are so many challenges that come with it, and that is why trust is so important, and making sure that you have relationships, strong, open, two-way relationships as you're doing virtual due diligence. And the last question I'll take is around intra-Africa investments. How do you do this, particularly in new sectors, in areas like art, which are just not traditional investment sectors? I think a lot of homework has to be done to find the right investors. So for example, when you think about the arts in Kenya, there's a fund, I think it's either, Heva Fund, that invests in non-traditional entrepreneurs. And they are not the only ones, but there's a lot of work that needs to be done to find investors like these. They're not easy to find. So if you can, or when you do find them, understand what are they investing in, again, what are they looking for, build the right relationships with the right people. If you're lucky, you might convince someone to invest in you, but also be creative in the ways in which you look for potential investment. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, ladies. I know there's so many more questions in the Q&A box, and thank you so much for your questions. As we said at the beginning, we wanted to start a conversation that we hope to continue even after this webinar. We will do our best as we send around the thank you email. We will send a survey for you to fill in, so you can also fill in your questions there as well. We will try and see how much we can answer even after this webinar to the questions that have been raised. Feel free to awesome. Diana has put the survey in the link. So feel free to fill the survey on the link that is there right now. I know a few of you are also beginning to leave. We thank you so much for your patience. We're about 15 minutes over time, but I think there's a lot of learning that we've gotten and we've shared here. So thank you so much for staying on. Fill the link and the form now. Fill it when we send the debrief email, and let us know what you thought about this particular forum. Feel free as well to reach out to us and connect to us through social media, through our social media handles, and we can probably follow up, at PES, and so on, and other social media handles. You can also maybe reach out to us via LinkedIn. Just make sure you add a note to say that we connected on this webinar, because I'm sure we usually get quite a lot of requests as well. We're happy to connect there as well. Let us know how you feel. So I just wanted to say thank you for spending your time with us. Thank you for allowing us this space to share our thoughts. Thank you for contributing as well in the chat box. It was really interesting to see some of the comments that were being placed in the chat box. And thank you so much as well for the questions. We'll do our best, as mentioned, to follow up after the webinar. For all of us, I want to first of all thank Diana and Anne for the fact that I asked you nicely. I tend to believe, but I feel like I also pressured you to jump on this with me. But I know you are all both of you are very passionate about empowering young people and women on this continent, and especially around entrepreneurship. And it has been a pleasure to share this space with you. Thank you, Women in Africa.
Thank you.
Geoffrey and everyone behind the scenes, Caroline, for this opportunity. Fill the form. People who have attended, thank you so much. I see you're beginning to leave. As you leave, please leave us your final words on the chat box, and we will continue reading that up. We thank you for your time. We thank you for your input. We thank you so much for your audience as well. And we thank you so much as well for your patience with this session. I'll hand it over to Dan and Anne to say that thank you. And you are free to leave at your pleasure. Thank you, everyone.
And maybe Anne, you could go first.
Sure. Thank you so much. And I will not repeat anything that has been said, but we are excited to start this conversation with you, and we look forward to connecting more.
Thank you very much. Again, it was a very insightful webinar. And one of the things that I noted is people are asking where are these networks where women can talk about their business, their opportunities. Please fill in the form. We'll be able to inform you about such webinars where you're able to get these resources. So, but thank you. Thank you, guys.
Have a great weekend. This is a good way to start your weekend. You may leave at your own pleasure. Thank you, everyone.
Oh, nice.